Hello, my name's Susan Hawthorne and I'm the publisher at Spinifex Press, and I am really thrilled today to be launching, hang on, I'm just going to stop the share, to be launching Lizz Murphy's wonderful new book, The Wear of My Face. I'd like to begin by saying that Spinifex Press respectfully acknowledges the wisdom of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and their custodianship of the lands and waterways. Please mute yourself if you are a visitor. The lands on which Spinifex offices are situated are Diru, Bunurong and Wurundjeri, Wadawurrung, Eora and Noongar. We also acknowledge the many women throughout history who have fought for women's freedom and for the freedom of lesbians, often at the cost of their lives. So today, as you will all know, we are launching The Wear of My Face by Lizz Murphy. Lizz was the first person I ever saw with a mobile phone. That was 1994, and it was the size and weight of a brick. It was really huge. So things have progressed a bit since then. I also met Merlinda Bobis at the same time, and both were at the 6th International Feminist Book Fair, which was held in Melbourne in 1994. So the order of things tonight is that Merlinda will speak about the launch The Wear of My Face after I've introduced her. Then Lizz will read and speak, and afterwards there's a chance to ask questions, make comments and discuss poetry. Renata will close the session and with some thank yous. Now, I do have to say that today has been a dead technology day. Rachel, who is my co-host, has had no power at all for the whole day, but magically managed to get stuff to us in the last half hour, maybe even 10 minutes. Merlinda has no internet connection, no NBN. They're putting in a new NBN next to her place. So she is coming to us over a phone rather than her being visible. But you will still be able to hear her. She is loud and clear. So after I've introduced her, Merlinda will speak through a green phone picture. Merlinda Bobis is the author of 4 novels, 6 poetry books, 2 collections of short stories, 10 dramatic works have been performed. Her novels, Fish Hair Woman and Locust Girl, a Love Song, have both won major awards. Locust Girl, the Christina Stead Prize for Fiction in the New South Wales Premier's Literary Awards in 2016. Fish Hair Woman has been published in Spanish, and in 2022, Locust Girl will be published in Tamil. Accidents of Composition is her most recent poetry book, and The Kindness of Birds was released in May this year. She says that for her, writing is homecoming, a return to roots, a retrieval through memory, and a reckoning with loss, hopefully with care and grace. So I'm just going to show you a picture of The Kindness of Birds, which is Merlinda's most recent book. Dr. Bobis is an honorary senior lecturer at ANU, and she lives on Ngunnawal country. Over to you, Merlinda, and I will share your picture.
Okay, I can start.
Yep.
I'm speaking on the phone from Ngunnawal country that has been nurturing my living and writing, and I'm most grateful for this. Good evening, everyone. Sorry I can't be there, visually, but here at least you hear me. Okay. A pair will never be the same again after we read this book that we're launching tonight, The Wear of My Face by admired poet and dear friend Lizz Murphy. A pear is an ancient. I hold its history. It rocks in the hull of my hand. We read these lines from the opening poem in the book, and a pear rocks in our hands too. We feel its curve, its weight, and the weight of the history of the planet and the making of a poem. A scientific paper on the pear places its origins to 65 to 55 million years ago. In Lizz's poem, The Architecture of Pear, the poem about a pear dates back to the thing itself. Each word about a pear is a word out of it. This line in the poem is affirmed throughout the book. Always we experience the instant equivalence between poetic image and its origin, the lived thing, which we instantaneously live as we read, like in this poem. The smell and texture of a small plain loaf, unsliced, when loaves sliced were in grease-proof wrappers, when cellophane wraps arrived with an orange sun on the side. I smell that small plain loaf. Or take this other moment. He was 2 rows away, but I could smell the iron on that man's shirt. Fine white threads permeated with uncommon domesticity. I connect with the back of father's necks, clean shaven, after a weekly visit to the barber. Reading this, I'm hugging my own father again when he was still alive. I'm a child smelling the iron on his shirt, his clean-shaven scent, its domesticity so palpable it sticks to your skin. But Liz is at her best when she takes you through a rush of sensations, leaving you delightfully discombobulated. Listen. That head of hers, its ultramarine rose madder, its vermilion eye, a fine line on a wall, a small moth on one side of it, the smudge of gilt-wing powder on the other, face patchy in the blue surge moonlight. She freed herself, wildly lined against the sky. I may breathe. She picks up a leaf. It is blood in her hand. But what a sublime shape. She rises above his scrambled mind. In this excerpt from a prose poem, you never know where the poet is taking you. You want to pause, savor that ultramarine rose madder, that smudge of gilt-wing powder, but you're swept from image to image into the lift of each until you, the reader, with the poetic persona and the poet, pick up a leaf and oh, it's blood, but what a sublime shape in your hand. And you soar with this insight. Image equals insight. Now the same rush and rise happens in this next example. Her lung, a Latin cavity, a delta. She wears her wonder like a bonnet, love slung over one shoulder, walks with orchids hedges, her bets on the green of leaves, cradles, nests, and sunsets. One eye carving heaven out of earth. You are caught in sensation after sensation. And again, that soaring when you arrive at that one eye carving heaven out of earth. It is the image that is the insight, and it hits you. Like in this opening of another poem, raw heartbreak, she said, and lines cracked the page. You read it and you hear that crack. You hear your own heartbreak. In this book, there is the constant shifting of gears as a line or a poem moves. The reader is whisked away from the initial moment, whisked away by an afterthought, then whisked away again into an afterthought that seems to keep inserting itself into the original moment. But this is how a woman whisks herself away from life's domestic demands, right? So she can undercut the main line, her main life, so to speak, as mother attending to a child, a wife baking bread, a caregiver ministering to an ill husband. She shifts from this main line to assert herself, her body, her unheard asides and sniffles, the wear of her face that might otherwise be disappeared by domesticity, the mundane, the daily grind. It is a survival technique in life and a brilliant poetic strategy. As poet, Liz is the eye, carving heaven out of earth, transforming the patchy face with blue surge moonlight, then quickly whisking her attention to a leaf. Now blood, but what a sublime shape. It is a conspiracy for survival between woman and the natural world. We sense this throughout the book, like in the short poem about mourning. The Karawong mourns on the hospital road. In my dreams, my arms around her, wide black shoulders, my condolences, her apprehension. A headskirt snagged on her waistband, dear old thighs, backs of knees, miniature lilac waterscapes, long life, long day. It is a joint mourning between Karawong and woman. It is also joint solace. Now, a similar conspiracy happens in this other poem. I am waiting in the waiting room with Mary Oliver, celebrating nature. Leaving, I am greeted by slashing sunlight and a magpie chorister. We are both happy to see blue after deluge after deluge. At lunch, the breaking news is terrorism. We will check our friend's itinerary when we get home. In this book, a woman's work is not confined to the domestic, that the stereotyping lexicon confines to the label of only domestic. Listen to how Liz whisks us away from this confinement in this poem about a woman's work. A woman strips grass, splits cane, dreams the plant, the loop and stitch, honors with her hands, her mothers, her aunties, whisper making into earth fingers, a sieve like a lace leaf, a river fold. A basket carries child, seed, honey, snares an eel, a scoop nets echoes the bend of tree, turn of stone. Then the poet concludes, a woman's work, preserve, attain, share new knowledge, for women to make, women to lift the mist, unfurl the blue. This book honors woman's work, the making of something with her hands, shifts knowledge, that shifts the planet. More importantly, one woman's work facilitates the work of all women, which is to shift knowledge, to shift the planet. Politics is woman's work. Protest is woman's work. We read this throughout the book that addresses climate change, women's and children's rights, social inequity, war and refugees, among others. And of course, poetry is woman's work. A woman's work is not just baking bread that smells, but also making poems about bread that smells. Then asking, why do some have more bread than others, and still others don't have any? And always in this book, a woman works with her hands, with her body. She writes with it. Listen. I write like I am the extra, trying not to trip up the stars or the stairs. I write like I have been deveined, like a green tiger prawn, to be tossed in a hot pan. I inhale the garlic, write like I am the main course. I write like a disruption, like a wounded eagle, like a rent dream, a tangled sheet. I write like the homeless sign on a cardboard tear, like somewhere in the world, a book has fallen open, like the young man who cries in the wind, like the animal on the roof, like demand, like a ruffian, like self-delight, like the fading horizon, the fruiting moon, the nest-raiding Karawong, the bird caught in the net, like a sleeve of tension. This makes me swoon. It's all here. The rush and rise of the domestic and mundane, the politics, the natural world, the transcendent, and always the woman inserting, asserting herself in the line. I work, I write. All these diverse spaces of being woman, being human, work together in one poem. one extended breath. And as reader, I'm working, breathing with it too. I'm included, part of this community that Liz has lovingly written in this book. As one poem reads, she calls me big tree woman. I am taken aback. I'm not sure I deserve this yet. I feel my canopy grow, soar, spread, lime and crimson shoots, a crowd of them singing, singing breath into being. My feet take root, bind into earth, break through dry, reach water. My roots share moisture with earth and other trees. I am community. I see other women as tree women, women of age or coming of age, the marks on their once smooth bark, the curves and crevices, life ingrained. Who needs tattoos? Indeed, who needs tattoos when we have the marks of life on our faces? The title poem in the book has this line: I think you have to wear your face. This book enjoins us to wear our faces and recognize that we all share the wear and tear, the furrows on brow, the crow's feet, the sag of cheeks, the downturned lips, but also the laugh and love lines. Wear them. All these proofs that we have lived. Wear them bravely and proudly, thus always with grace. With this enjoyment to wear our faces, I declare the wear of my face launched. Congratulations, dear Liz.
Thank you very much, Merlinda. That was a beautiful launch speech. So our next speaker will be Liz herself. Liz also lives on Ngunnawal country. She is an Irish-Australian poet who says she writes mainly when on the road between Binalong, New South Wales and Canberra, ACT, a habit she began while commuting on the bus eons ago. Now she commutes by car and continues to keep her eyes open for poems. You can almost see the poems standing beside the road waiting to be collected. You will recognise some of these in her book. Liz also writes about the spaces in between when most of us think nothing is happening. It can be interstellar space or the space between people in a waiting room. Reading Liz makes you read the world differently. Liz has had 14 books published, and The Wear of Her Face is her 9th poetry book. She is the editor of We Girls, Women Writing from an Irish Perspective, and the Belfast Telegraph has already interviewed Liz about The Wear of My Face. She also has another book published by Spinifex, Two Lips Go Shopping, wonderful book. She is a former poetry editor at the Canberra Times and has worked in regional arts development and as a publicist in the arts and publishing. She was once a regional newspaper editor and before that, a shop assistant. So over to you, Liz.
Thank you so much, Susan. It's a lovely introduction, and thank you so much to Merlinda. Just really wonderful words. It makes me think that maybe I haven't done too bad a job, with this book. Thank you, Merlinda, for launching The Wear of My Face into the world with such generosity and the eloquence that we've all come to expect of you on any occasion. It means so much to me. And I know it also means such a lot to many of us to have you now living and writing in the Canberra region. It's a real bonus. So I have a few words and a couple of poems to read for you. I never tire of telling people that I live in the small village of Binalong because it really is beautiful and has a never failing strength of community, which we have been in awe of since moving here in 1981. And so this is a little geography lesson, okay? Binalong is in the Yass Valley, which is in the southern tablelands of New South Wales and in the surrounding regions of the ACT. And because Canberra is just down the road, 100 kilometres, and is a wonderful arts and cultural centre, we enjoy all sorts of interactions and partnerships back and forward across the border. So I feel I belong to two very rich communities. I was also fortunate enough to receive support from the ACT government for the Wear of My Face. And without that, the new writing and development work would not have happened. And the book might still be another couple of years away, such is life. I really am so appreciative for this support. Obviously, the Wear of My Face would not be here at all without Spinifex Press. The indefatigable Susan Hawthorne and Renata Klein, who's also here tonight, who have made an extraordinary contribution to women, women's literature, women's rights through 30 years of award-winning independent publishing, as well as through their own writing. I thank them from the bottom of my heart, along with their whole team, Marilanne, Rachel, Pauline, Caitlin, and Sharon. Special thanks, of course, go to designer Deb Snibson for the gorgeous cover, which is receiving compliments galore, and to designer and typesetter Helen Christie for making the whole book look so flash. And to Camilla Duffy, back here in Bynalong, for not only her capturing photography, but such a fun photo shoot, chooks and all. And I won't tell you what's happened to the chooks since that day. It's a sad story. Susan, in her role as editor, gave sound and enlightening advice, as did readers Merlinda Bobis, Marianne Baruch, and Sarah St. Vincent Welch. Thank you also for your very kind and insightful words on the cover. I want to mention Southern Tablelands Arts, Rose Marin and Giselle Newbury, who give untold support to artists and organisations across a large and diverse region. I think they're here tonight. Yass Valley poets Jane Baker, Victoria McGrath, and Robin Sykes. We last performed together before COVID, but fingers crossed for another gig in October. And also that constellation of writers and artists, Postcards from the Sky, especially our regulars at the moment, Deborah Fairglen, Hazel Hall, Claire Martin, Jennifer Camari Martinello, and Sarah St. Vincent Welch again, who continue to meet at the Belconnen Arts Centre in Canberra, thanks to Moni McInerney, who helps run things there. I'm looking forward to when we are all out of lockdown and feel safe enough to gather and create together. There are so many other people I could thank for support, friendship, and inspiration, and more of them are listed in the acknowledgements. For strength and love, family, best in the world. Also waiting desperately for COVID to settle and to allow us to reunite in the real. Dear Bill, Aruna in Ireland with Jared and wee Ruby, Brendan with Helen in Canberra, Michaela in Melbourne and Georgia on the north coast. My bros Stretch and Elena near Chinchilla in Queensland. And we have to remember our youngest brother and David also in Ireland. And they're all, most of them are here. I would give you the stars if I could. And of course, thank you to everyone here tonight. It's so great to see you all. You might not have traveled far given that it's Zoom, but I know that some of you got up very early indeed. So quite a number of the poems in this book were essentially written on the road, as Susan has and Merlinda have said. We certainly didn't do distance in Ireland, and we didn't really do it in Wollongong either. That was our old haunt on the south coast. But once we became rural, we had to quickly get used to the idea that 100 kilometres was a stone's throw. This is a poem from a return trip. We've just driven through Yass, and today I'm going to dedicate that poem to Susan. She seems to like it. We tried to tell him. We tried to tell that little red pea plater with the black roof racks that his black wallet, iPad, fell off the roof as he veered off in the direction of Gundagai, Melbourne. He was going at a pace, but we got level with him without blocking traffic. Well, until that car sitting in the right lane caught up. Beeped and beeped and beeped, windows down to shout to him, his aqua t-shirt, his fresh haircut, pink neck, blondish or brownish. It's lying in the middle of the road before the McDonald's roundabout. Eventually, he twigged and pulled over. But we couldn't get back into the left lane to pull ourselves over, and our turn-off loomed. We imagine he is still wondering why those bastards were blasting the horn at him, or what is wrong with his vehicle that they saw but he can't. If you see a young guy going pale at his first attempted visa purchase, somewhere between Yass and Melbourne, pass this message on. Our failure lies heavily somewhere in the gut, with the monarch butterflies that burst yellow on our windscreen, and the day's fresh egg I dropped in the chook house when we got home. Thanks. Thanks, Susan, for the thumbs up. Some poems roam to different places of their own accord. This time it's a distant memory of a road trip from Bynalong to Perth by car and coach. And my kids might remember this, which ends with a reference to the Gonski Report, a landmark review of school funding in Australia, announced by Labor in 2010 and ditched by the Liberals. In 2021, educational equity is still declining, and that's without the impact of COVID. So who knows what's going to happen with that. Just need to have a little sip. It's only tea. Greyhounds make great pets. Legs like risen loaves of bread, our heads lolling at the speeding landscape, not taking in the all brown. The odd tree is a thumb swell of khaki. We yearn for an old man kangaroo, an emu, a camel, a highway robbery, some rerun of history, yet another aircon breakdown. Someone else's road trip reminds me of this, and the coach line I will never travel with again. I am now thinking of greyhound racing and the increasing number of greyhounds out walking, the elegant arc of them, lovingly rehomed instead of you know what. Still they have that forlorn mien. A guy on a TV ad confesses to his young wife, I curse. She is not your mother. So anyway, okay, they've got a quick loan. We don't have to hear from them again, and the cat will survive at any cost. Boats scour the water surface white, spectators on open water in their own race, and we on the verge of losing Gonski reform, of failing our children failing, falling, our children wading neck deep. So something I seem to do a lot is think about or compare what's going on here or here and now with what is going on elsewhere or with someone else's life. One of those poems is with thanks to Kathleen McCracken in Ireland, who wrote a very poetic note about what was going on with her and of course the weather over there. And it reminds me also of when we were on the telephone more than we might be now with all the choices that we have. There was always a discussion about the weather. And also, to remember, we always had to talk about the time zone. A great lot of the expensive phone call was spent in working out what time it was we were. But this poem is about the weather initially. How's the weather in Bynalong? The sky in Bynalong is clear blue, crystal as decimated sea. El Nino is weakening to neutral, but the fire warning is still on alert. Temps are increasing again in spite of autumn. We wish rain would drift our way, change our white hills verdant. Elsewhere, praise for heroes in the Brussels blast warms hearts. It was warmish in Lahore when the Easter bomb went off in that amusement park. Security forces continue to collect evidence. There is always a child's shoe. The Brussels bombings marked that poem as being first drafted in 2016. I did a lot of writing that year thanks to the motivation provided by poet Kit Kellen's online project 366. And I remember that Susan and some other people here tonight were in that project. We had to create every day and post every day. And I know I wasn't alone in posting 1 minute before midnight on many occasions. The collection ranges over about 10 years. It includes poems that have sat about waiting for an opportunity like this, poems that have waited to be worked on more, and of course, quite a bit of new work. Place and displacement is a recurring theme. I'm an immigrant. I've moved from one part of New South Wales to another quite different part. I come from the north of Ireland and experienced the Troubles, though only for its first year or so, unlike others who lived through the whole thing of over 25 years. I think it's interesting how something might sit with us for a long time before finding just the right spark for it to gel as a poem. Sparks were flying when I read an article about a Russian travel company wanting to sell tours to the front line of the Syrian civil war. War zone tours. I can tell you what it's like. I can tell you what it's like, ears and eyes out on stalks, neck creaking over one shoulder or another, heart in a vice of fear, rifles at attention on every corner, tanks and jeeps changing the colour of your afternoons, people you have known running for their lives, workmates afraid to sit near you and maybe you them. Family men turned guard and vigilante, guns in their pockets. Women doing normal shopping dropped to the ground, a bullet in the back. People on a harmless night out in pieces across the pavement. I can't start to tell you about the children. I can tell you what it's like sitting in your mind your own business living room, listening to gunshot getting heavier and closer, not knowing whether to go or stay, if your street will be cordoned off with barbed wire, overturned vehicles, the men with guns, and should you be kept in or better not. Taking your name off the front doorbell so you can't be categorized or bombed out. Sirens on the increase, helicopters low in the sorry sky. I can tell you what it's like after you leave and you have begun picking up your own pieces. And every week you're watching on the news your country burning, watching the news for people you know, dead, injured, evacuated. And some days you see them. I can't start to tell you what that's like. Just stay away from the war zone. It's not a sideshow alley. There is no step right up. You have no business there. I should read you The Wear of My Face, the title poem, and say thank you to my cracker sister-in-law, Elena, for posting this photograph on social media and help bringing it together. And it also coincided with a conversation with a very dear man who's no longer with us, very sadly. So I'll read it in memory of Richard Conrick. The Wear of My Face. Graffiti on my right eardrum. It is childhood scarring. 6 wild horses, 5 stop to stare. The other, I hear her say behind the camera, is hiding in the scrub. The beauty of them, and they are dog meat. I think you have to wear your face, he told me. It wasn't anything personal. I dreamt of torture, I said, and I was the perpetrator. I felt after, like the waking dead. Waiting for the fire to take, I slow blink, the rims of my eyelids, crescents of ice. I have an evolving creative process which I've been wanting to give more attention to, and that is firstly making art and text and writing from that. So the sequence of poems starting with Forecast has grown out of that process, a bunch of poems in the middle of the book. And those poems are based on a book of torn paper and found text collage, which I actually have here somewhere in case you're interested later. The images and text fragments are from science journals, very old books, and glossy magazines. There's also a theme of stars and skies threading through the collection, and that appears in this sequence as well. So I'll read that first poem from the sequence, which is called Forecast. And the first part of it in particular is a mix of that fine text. Forecast. And it occurs when new stars form at a high rate inside. Add a handful of blooms, pretty those collisions of temper, little killers under the dark, crying to heaven, as the earth reeled beneath, stood aghast. Rows of clouds ahead, like a great feather and down Duna. How cold it looked, and still my surprise when I drove into the sudden chill. I am no weather forecaster. Could have blocked out comets in Earth-crossing orbits. Ceres, the dwarf planet orbited by the spacecraft Dawn. Ceres, the Roman goddess of the growth of food, plants, agriculture, and grain. Ceres, the goddess of bread. Where was she in the famine? Ceres, the goddess, a poet sent to hell. Dawn is retired now, still orbiting, uncontrolled. Nice little bit of space junk floating around above us. And the poet I refer to is Evan Boland, and the poem is The Making of an Irish Goddess, for those of you who might like to look at that. So I'll finish with a sentimental poem from when my family was all together at my son Brendan's and Helen's home in Canberra. I'll just find it before I start. I seem to be reading a lot from the first half of the book. Here we go. So we're at our son Brendan's and lovely Helen's home in Canberra, and gorgeous daughter and wee Ruby. I really have a lovely family. We're visiting from Ireland, so we're all together. Most of us were together, and I think there was a bit of family stuff going on at the time. Maybe some losses at the time, and there's always a health situation. And this is one of those very nice moments that I hold dear about my family. Anyway, I'm lying down, listening to their banter drifting through, and it took me back a bit. Please leave the door open. I lay me down for an afternoon rest, listening to thunder, the fan, the banter, their voices drifting up the hall, their laughter like fine china. I remember lying along a sofa, tucked in behind three women, the girls from work, lined up with their curvy legs, round bums, their scents, perfume, makeup, hairspray, nylons. Their shoes in pearl blue and green, the misshapen leather toes, their bunions and corns, who has the worst? My sleep drifting in and out like breathing, the strangeness of my mother laughing. She should do it more often, the joy of it. Waves of calm, another joke, all in good humor, waves of delight, the smell of more tea. This is what I think it must be like, an ending well tended. Someone thoughtful closes the hall door. I am not ready for the silence, not yet. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Liz. Thank you very much. It's wonderful to hear you read, because the poems leap off the page. You hear them differently than what you do when you read them. Yeah, they're two very different experiences. Now, if anybody would like to say something poetic or talk about poetry or raise any other conversation, we have about 5-10 minutes that we could do that in. If you would like to, you could put up your hand on, if you go to the reactions bit, you can raise your hand there, and then I can see that you want to do that, or Rachel can see, one of us can see you want to do that. So, or just unmute yourself and speak if there's nobody else speaking at the time. That's another easy way to do it. I can't see anybody with a hand up. So anybody want to say anything? No, also quiet. Well,
I want to say something.
Okay, please do, Vesna.
I met Liz many, many years ago in 1995. I just became an interpreter, and Liz was with another woman running a project for refugee and migrant women. Memories, poetry, short stories from life experiences. Do you remember, Liz?
It's coming back. Yes, yes.
Migrant Resource Centre in Canberra.
Yes, I do remember. Yep.
One detail that just has ever since stayed in my heart was we spent a lot of time together, and Liz and her colleague came even to my place then in Gordon, and we were talking about how to best sort of phrase everything that was happening, because there were many different languages, but there were several women from the Serbian background that I come from. So when we finished all of that, we were happy with everything. They just said, oh, yeah, just put your invoice out. And at that stage, I was doing some night shifts in a couple of women's refugees around Canberra, and had over the top high mortgage and little kids and all of that. And I thought, oh my God, you know, how can I put all these hours and time into money? And I do need money. Anyway, I did cut it in about half and issued the invoice. And the administrator in then Migrant Resource Centre almost fell off her feet. And it wasn't much money, guys, but I don't know what they expected. And I was feeling so embarrassed and so disempowered as well. Like, we did all this work, you know, and Liz came, and I was really distraught. And Liz came to me and said, what about women, fair pay for fair women's work? And I just thought, oh my goodness, that's something that I really needed to hear. That was one of my first ever interpreting and translating jobs. And I just felt, are you sure? And she said, yeah, absolutely. You deserve it. And I just thought, I deserve this money. Good. So thank you, Liz.
You're more than welcome.
Yes, and
lovely to see you.
writing and translating and interpreting is always underpaid, unfortunately. Anybody else?
Yes,
Just
me.
speak up. Hello, Trish.
Hello, Susan. Hello, Liz. Two Lips went shopping.
Yes, great memory.
I'm intrigued by your on-the-road technique. I have all sorts of images of you speaking very quickly into a voice recorder, or pulling over to the side and scribbling something down. So how do you actually, what's your technique for writing on the road?
My very first tiny little book, I'm trying to remember what it was called, but it had a line about something about on those damn buses, because I used to commute by bus, and I would always sort of say, you know, you've got to be quick when you're writing on buses. I haven't really got a line for the rest of it. I think really, actually, a lot of it I just collected in my head. I tend to, because of lots of different pressures and life being very broken up, which it is for all of us many of us for different reasons, my poems come together in small pieces, really. And so if I see something when I'm driving on the road, and I've just seen my daughter who's in Ireland, hello, Runa, I can see everyone's faces now. She made it. And so one of the reasons a lot of the poems are very fragmented is because it reflects my lifestyle over quite a number of years now. And so often there are very small moments or quick images, and while my memory is pretty stuffed, I can usually hold on to those small moments and those small thoughts, and then come back and at some point scribble them into notebooks or put them on the computer, depending where I am. And sometimes they stay very tiny poems, and other times they build up into a bigger poem. And in this book, I've been trying to resist the temptation to smooth them all out and make them more sensible and linear and all the rest of it. So some of the poems jump around quite a bit, and I've been really enjoying that. And as I say, others just say stay small poems. So it's really, I do it in bits.
Well, I was intrigued listening to you because I got the bus bit, but as somebody who lives alone and who's always the driver, by the time I got to the next traffic light, the thought would have gone. Just like you say, just random bits. So I bought myself a little battery operated voice recorder, and all you had to do is put your thumb on it and gabble. And then, you know, if you had another idea or another image. So I would then transpose them onto the computer and keep files each year and call them Vox. So it'd be Vox 2019, but a very similar process. And because continuity is really difficult, but it was fascinating hearing how you go about it and how you resist trying to perfect them once they've come together. So I look forward to reading it, and congratulations on the collection, Liz.
Thank you so much, Trish. And people won't know that you were my editor on Two Lips Went Shopping, my previous Spinifex Press poetry collection. And she's just absolutely wonderful to work with. It was such a great experience. Thank you.
With my pleasure.
and a beautiful poet too, of course. Many of the people here tonight are gorgeous poets, you know, including Susan Hawthorne, of course, as many of you know. And yeah. I'm sitting here looking, I have to say, I can see my brother in Queensland, Stretch, and his partner, Elena, Stretch Jameson and Elena Garcia. Sorry, we haven't seen each other for years and years, and Spinifex Press has made it possible for this to happen. Big hairy fella there. That's my little brother. Imagine getting him to a poetry reading. I didn't think that would happen.
Well, it's always good. I did a poetry reading once in that town near where I grew up, and my cousin came along and I read a poem from my book Cow, all about the cows snuggling up to one another, and it was such fun. So it's good to do things like that. Okay, one more if anybody wants to say anything. Okay, Penelope. Penelope, you're on mute. Unmute yourself.
I have unmuted myself.
You are now. I can hear you now.
Okay. Liz, just that short reading. Firstly, congratulations. But I noticed you mentioned currawongs a couple of times, and to me, they're like the ultimate murderous bird, but you seem to have an affection for them. I'm wondering when they first entered into your consciousness and what it is about them that makes you want to write poems with them in.
I think they just seem to be, you know, when they're there, you know they're there. You know, you can't miss them, can you? And there was one small poem where the currawong appears, which Merlinda read beautifully. And it was just calling out all down the road at the hospital, you know. And at one point it was actually calling out cooey, and I thought, oh, that's where cooey comes from. Unless, of course, it's worked the other way, and the currawong heard someone. I was people calling cooey. I'm not sure what order it happened in, but it was amazing to hear this bird call out cooey. But I think probably mainly when we first moved to Bynalong. I mean, you know, Australia's full of birds and we love birds. And of course, there would have been some everywhere we were. But once we came to Bynalong, we had more space and more trees. We loved planting trees, and we had space to plant more of them, so more birds. And they're around. But I think my real favorite is the raven, actually.
Corvids.
Yeah. There's a term for it when you study ravens, isn't there? So I used to say I'm an amateur. See, talking about memory, Trish. A lot of things do get lost, but there's a term for people who study or observe corvids. Is it corvid or COVID? Oh,
It's probably a corvidologist or some such thing.
I have actually put the R in when I've been talking about the virus. I shouldn't. Anyway, there's a term which I quite like the sound of, but I can't remember it now. So yeah, some things do get lost.
I wanted to say hello to Marianne Boruch, but she disappeared off the screen. Marianne, thank you for being up at 3 a.m. in America. If you want to say anything, you'd need to unmute.
Oh,
there.
Yeah, I was just about to write a chat note, but this has been wonderful, really. I mean, and Liz, what a great reading. So terrific. Anyway, and nice to see you, Susan.
Thank you.
Now I can picture you. Anyway, this is a lovely Zoom. I had a hard time getting in somehow, but I'm sort of, what is it? I'm digitally handicapped. But I finally have no idea how I got in, though. I have no memory of how I got in. This is what happens, you know. But anyway, thank you for inviting me. Really, it's been great to see everyone, and I see some people I know out there, Sarah, and you know, I see Jen Webb is in attendance too. So this has been great. Thank you, and thank you, Liz. Really, those are wonderful poems.
Thank you so much, Marianne, and thank you for your support during the project. We were so lucky to have met you. Marianne was in Canberra, was it 2019, on a Fulbright,
Right.
Fulbright fellowship or scholarship, and you know, quite a number of us had the great fortune to meet her and spend time with her. It's just been gorgeous. And well, I had a question for Marianne, actually, that reminds me. You mentioned one time on that in America that you don't do book launches. Actually, you said we don't do book launches, we're too mean. So, so I wondered, how then do you, because we rely quite a lot on book launches, book lunches, yes, and book launches to help get some attention to the books and maybe get them out there. So do you just have so many people that you don't have to do that, or what do you do instead?
It's just not a habit. I mean, more and more it's happening, especially during COVID, I think, you know, because it's possible to do it through Zoom. And in fact, Copper Canyon is doing a launch, turns out, you know, of my Australia book. And so that'll be in late October. But that's kind of miraculous, it seems to me. But anyway, and so maybe we're getting less mean. Hard to believe.
I think it's also that bigger publishers don't feel the need to have launches, whereas for smaller publishers and independent publishers, it's a critical means of getting the word out and getting people talking about books, particularly poetry.
Yeah, I think Copper Canyon is going to do like maybe 3 or 4 of us together. You know, we each have a little slot and we'll read and so on. So it's their fall list. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that, I guess. I don't know. How's it been, Liz, to do this?
Oh, yeah, it's good. It's good. The great thing about launches, whether it's your own or someone else's, is that it's a great opportunity to get together, isn't it? I think we enjoy the social occasion. In fact, I remember one time we were, the ACT Writers Centre would have a regular, like Christmas time, end of year get together. And I was chatting to one woman who was a playwright and hung out with performers. And she said to me, I'm just really enjoying this. She says, I just can't get over how, you know, all you writers, you know, you just all get together and talk and talk and talk at these kinds of functions. And I looked at her and said, but well, what do you all do? And she says, we just eat. Yeah, but we worked out that it was perhaps because they're in performance and they're with people more often than we might be, because often we're on our own doing our writing. It's a solo, largely a solo arts practice. And so maybe they were just sick looking at each other and just were interested in the food, whereas we go in, we're really glad of the chance to catch up with everyone.
Yes. Oh, well, look, it's been fabulous. So I'm going to hand over to Renata now, Renata Klein, the other publisher and co-founder of Spinifex Press. And just to say, we've turned 30 this year, so we're very happy with that. Renata, have you unmuted?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, it's just been a delight to listen to all of you. I've had a really particular harrowing day today when nothing worked. And so I was kind of running to this launch, and it's really calmed me down. First of all, the very beautiful reading of Merlinda, of Lizz's beautiful poems, and then Liz talking about her poems. And I know, it's obvious to all of you who are here, especially the poets, that words can really do magic, and these words have really done magic today, at least for me. So I just want to do some thank yous to everybody. And first of all, of course, to the author, Lizz Murphy. And yes, me too. I remember your brick phone that you had. We were mightily impressed, Liz, that you had actually managed to leap to a so-called mobile phone when none of us had one. So that was really important. And the Lizz publicity with 2 Zs, I will never forget. So it's just wonderful to have you as an author again after Tulip Shopping and the Wee Girls. And the poems are beautiful. And you already thanked Deb Snipson for her beautiful cover of The Wear of My Face. I also really want to thank Helen Christie for the internal design. Helen is our typesetter at the moment, and well, not at the moment, for many years. And every book that we do is actually really particularly beautiful. So thank you to Helen. One thing I still have to say to Liz, which is I just had such a laugh when your photo arrived with a chook in your arm, the chicken for non-Australian viewers, because virtually at the same day, we got another author photo, which is for Max Robinson's book, Detransitioning Beyond, Before and After, who's a very moving and very good insights into the whole problem with lesbians who think they're actually trans, going through a lot of horrible drugs and then deciding that, no, actually, they made a mistake. They found, in her case, she found feminism and lesbianism and has now detransitioned. And she sent us a photo of herself with a turkey. And honestly, it really arrived on the same day. And I thought, that's just fantastic, We should just rename ourselves like Spinifex, the animal press. Maybe we'll get more reviews. And of course, as you know, we did these fabulous animal books in the 90s. The Girl's Best Friend, that was about dogs and women and their relationships. And then we had Cat Tales, because we were told, what about the cats? And then we did horse dreams. So we have these beautiful books, but I'm getting sidelined because I have to thank more people, which is, one of them is Rachel, who was here before. Rachel is our promotions guru, and I noticed that she actually had Dashi up with her, and poor old Dashi, her publishing assistant, had to go to the eye hospital today. So I hope he will be fine. So, at Spinifex, we care very deeply about our friends. Our friend Nala clearly prefers a marrowbone to Susan and my company. So she hasn't bothered to come in, so we can't actually show you her, or her you, whatever the grammar is of that. Now, let me thank more women who work with us, because I just want to say that very clearly. Spinifex is our team. Without a team, we would not publish any of our books. And this year has been actually wonderful, but also really, really hard year for us. It's our 30th anniversary. As you have said, we published Not Dead Yet, Feminism, Passion and Women's Liberation, and we have still 3 more books to come out. Amongst them, Janice Raymond's very important, groundbreaking book, Doublethink, A Feminist Challenge to Transgenderism. Many of you know that Janice Raymond wrote the 1979 book, The Transsexual Empire, for which she is loved and hated. And no doubt the new book will do exactly the same. We also have a lovely, lovely book about the women's pool in Sydney, called The Women's Pool, edited by Lynn Spender, Dale Spender's sister. And then we do have another anthology about surrogacy, an international surrogacy anthology to stop this harmful practice. But
And
I'm going on.
and another poetry book.
Yes. Oh, how can I forget about the plague?
It's called
The
Andy Jeffs.
called
Yeah.
The Poetics of a Plague.
The
A
Comic
Haiku
Plague,
Diary.
exactly, by Sandy Jeffs. A haiku diary, so that'll be interesting too. So we still have a lot of work to do before we can actually have a break finally. But let me actually get on with my thank yous. I really sincerely want to thank Caitlin. I'm not sure if she's here. She's our social media manager. She lives in Perth. And then I want to thank Sharon Murphy, who's our warehouse manager down in Geelong, without whom no books would ever be sent out. And lastly, last but not least, Merlinda Damiano, our office manager of more than 20 years, without whom nothing would happen, really. So, and then lastly, and I'm repeating myself, last but not least, Susan Hawthorne, of course, my co-publisher, who is especially the spirit behind all the wonderful poetry books that we do. So I think I've actually done.
Pauline.
Pauline. Oh, I've forgotten Pauline. That's really bad. Pauline, our super wonderful, fantastic editor, who has also worked on Lizz's book, but she also does nonfiction. So she is just a girl of all trades, or a woman of all trades. I think that's all of us at Spinifex Press. Thank you very much for coming. And I see some familiar faces, Trish and Pauline and all the others, Sarah. And so thank you. And may Lizz's pair go worldwide, not just to Ireland, but in America, but everywhere, and spread joy. Thank you very much for coming this evening.
And I'm just going to finish by sharing a screen. So you get the ordering details. Just one more on. There we are. There's the information on how to get our books, where to tell your friends to get books. They can be ordered through bookshops, or you can order directly online from any of these places. So thank you to everybody. Particular thanks to Liz and Merlinda for tonight, and I hope it goes out into the world in a very fine way. Okay.